Welcome back, dear friends. This is Chef Walter with another episode of Flavors and Knowledge. Podcasts are rarely personal. We usually cover, especially in my case, food related themes and anything to do with health, wellness, travel, anything that could be useful to our listeners. But I wanted to make this particular podcast personal. I am a type 2 diabetic. I'm also a chef, and it's probably the worst of the two types. And in this podcast, I want to share with you how I manage my diabetes. And hopefully, some of my suggestions may be helpful to some of you out there. It is a personal story. My cooking school offered programs of various topics, but one in particular is dear to me because it is part of me. As I said, I'm a chef diabetic, perhaps the worst combination you can think of. Always surrounded by great food, but continuously scrambling and deciding what to eat and when. And to be clear, I played soccer until my 40s. I never had an issue with weight, nor did any members of my family. The discovery was a surprise, to put it mildly. I am a skinny chef, but fell victim to the American diet, just like millions of others. According to the CDC, more than 34 million Americans have diabetes, about 1 in every 10, and approximately 90 to 95% of them have type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes most often develops in people over age 45. Still, more and more children, teens, and young adults are growing it. As you know, diet is the basis of managing diabetes type 2, and every person with diabetes must strictly follow the diet that is prescribed by the diabetes specialist. A healthy, varied, and balanced diet plays a critical role in the treatment of the conditions and has the following main objectives: and reduce the risk of developing atherosclerosis and microvascular complications, typically like retinopathy and renal failure, and whatever else comes in the mix. In addition to diet therapy, type 2 diabetes mellitus can also include pharmacological treatment based on the clinical situation and the different personal characteristics. People with type 2 diabetes on insulin therapy may require individualized diet therapies, which are generally provided by the hospital dietetics and clinical nutrition services. But no panicking here. We may be able to defeat this nonsense, at least partially. And I put together a list of things that I do daily. And as I said previously, maybe there is a chance to help someone else out there. I try to reduce the consumption of simple sugars, which they are hidden everywhere you look. I try to limit the total fat intake to less than 30% of the daily calorie intake. I limit the consumption of saturated fats to less than 10% of the daily calorie intake. I try to get more fiber, at least 15 grams, which is about half ounces every 1,000 calories. I prefer foods with a low glycemic index. You can obtain a list from any related sites you visit, print it, and attach it to your refrigerator door, or try to memorize it, which is even better. I never skip breakfast, and if it happens, I will always have food-related items in a personal bag or my vehicle. When I travel abroad, I always bring my food on the plane. I consume complete meals for lunch and dinner, which are carbohydrates plus protein plus vegetable plus fruit, and periods of prolonged fasting. I divide the total amount of complex carbohydrates such as bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, and others equally into the three main meals. Occasionally, I'll have 3 slices of good quality pizza with my friends, but the dough is made with mother's yeast, which has a fewer sugar and a low bloodstream absorption. Mother's yeast is never available in franchises pizza places. It is something that you find in good quality establishment or, of course, homemade. I choose simple cooking methods, such as steaming, baking, grilling, a little bit less on that end. I use pressure cooking, stewing, or boiling. And when poaching vegetables, I always reserve the liquid and drink it later. And trust me, it is not weird. You'll get used to it. I strictly avoid breaded and fried foods which require a large amount of oil to cook. And in restaurant, mostly, I would never order anything that is fried or stuffed. Again, it's a matter of preference, and I simply don't have much trust in the procedures and preparations. These are the foods I do not allow: white, cane, and fructose sugar to sweeten drinks, sweet syrups such as maple or agave, and replace them with a sweetener such as stevia. I use raw honey in moderation, usually 1 teaspoon a day, or sugar-free jams. Very often I make my own when the fruit is in season and plentiful. I stay away from sweets and confectionery such as cakes, pastries, cookies, jellies, puddings, ice creams, popsicles, candies, and others that you already know. Occasionally I cheat on a special occasion, such as when my granddaughter's birthdays come around, so that I don't hurt their feelings. Sugar to me is a treat, and it gets treated as such, randomly. I don't eat the fruit and syrup, candied fruit, and fruit mustards. I usually boil my pears and apples, especially in winters, and then drizzle little honey over them. I stay away from sugary drinks or soft drinks such as cola, orange soda, tonic water, iced teas with sugar, and fruit juices, as they naturally contain sugar, even if they bear the words "no added sugar" on the package. Remember that the "no added sugar" slogan is simply a marketing wordage used all across the manufacturing world. I do not use sauces containing sugar, such as ketchup, barbecue sauce, or dipping sauces of any types, which hide the most sugars and sodium. Well-prepared food needs nothing. I do not use fatty condiments such as butter, margarine, lard, cream, etc. Only vegetable extracted oils, leaning toward extra virgin 80% of the time. I occasionally splurge on sausage, salami, and processed meat like mortadella and ham. I always seek the lowest sodium amount and never exceed 50 grams a week, usually 3 slices at most. And in this particular piece, I should probably do a little bit better and eliminate these no-value products out of my diet. I do drink 1 ounce of Jack Daniels 3 times a week. I know I shouldn't be telling you this, and 5 ounces of white wine daily. I do not drink red wine because of the high sugar content and because I simply don't like it. If the caloric difference between the wines is 40 calories, I'd rather eat a piece of a 95% dark chocolate instead of red grape juice, and that will be practically my dessert. Fruit contains sugar, fructose, naturally, and I fully respect the quantities indicated for my body. I limit sugary fruits such as grapes, banana, figs, persimmons, mandarins, and those with a higher glycemic index such as melon and watermelon to an occasional consumption. I will consume more cherries, apples, pears, apricots, peaches, strawberries, plums, and grapefruits. Keep in mind that the degrees of ripeness of the fruit changes its glycemic index. The more ripe and sugary, the higher the glycemic index number. Chestnuts, potatoes, and corn have a relevant starch sources so that they could be replaced with bread, pasta, rice, and other complex carbohydrates. Out of the three, I would eat chestnuts once a year at the celebration of St. Martin. It was a childhood tradition in my family in Italy, and the only day when my father allowed one consumption for us. Of course, without table food. Otherwise, always diluted in water, and always according to our age. Potatoes and corn are overrated to me, probably because growing up both tuber and vegetables were served daily to my grandfather's pigs in their extensive farmland. I never saw corn eaten by humans until I came here. We ate polenta, however. Go figure. Also, potatoes have a relatively high glycemic index, and its derivatives, some like mashed potatoes and gnocchi, are loaded as well. When in the mood for gnocchi, I replace potatoes with butternut squash, spinach, or pureed beets, lightly sauced with a little olive oil, parmigiano, and unbaked. It is truly delicious and satisfying. I stay away from polished rice, foods made with rice flour and refined cereal in general. Ordinary white bread, breadsticks, crackers, rusks, etc. have a high glycemic index, and I'll eat them in small quantities and usually not combined in the same meal. I don't use salt very much and often cook without it. I try to extract natural minerals from food during the cooking process, a technique that we in the United States are resisting in learning. I never eat food that naturally contains high quantity of salt or sodium, such as canned or brined food, meat extracts, and soy-type sauces, or the famous duck sauce found in Oriental restaurants. Trust me, those packets have never met a duck. Instead of salt, to flavor the preparations, I use 3 teaspoons of grated Grana Padano PDO or Parmigiano Reggiano cheese loaded with healthy salt and dairy. Both kinds of cheese are rich in calcium, functional proteins with high biological value, and they include the 9 essential amino acids and the vitamins of the group B and antioxidants such as vitamin A, zinc, and selenium. And so don't be afraid to eat them as you desire. I add olive oil on the food, raw, with a spoon, and without exaggerating. 3 tablespoons a day in any combination. And I think that is the most that you can do. I consume vegetables, both raw and cooked, in a 50-50% proportion. In large portion, especially for the critical intake of fiber and for the content of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. I recommend greeny leaf vegetables such as lettuce, spinach, cabbage, turnips, greens, etc. And when choosing a salad, I always go for the bitter versus the sweet. Romaine, Bib, iceberg, or mesclun. I call them corporate greens for office use. They don't have the nutritional value of guys like escarole, radicchio, endive chicory, dandelion, and others. Remember, bitter is king. Salads always at the end of the meal because it helps the digestive system. A normal dining system does not include finishing a good meal with carbohydrates, typically dessert. We only do that here for some reason. I still haven't figured out after so many years. I eat fresh or frozen seafood and no less than 2 to 3 times a week, mostly from a reputed supplier, and never purchase from the supermarkets unless I know the fishmonger in the department. too many shade practices convince me to stay away from a large chain who often resort to manipulating the products, which will be a topic for another segment. I eat the followers in moderation: pasta, barley, spelt, rice, couscous, barley bread, rye, and other complex carbohydrates. For instance, wholemeal pasta, wholemeal bread, wholemeal crackers, wholemeal rusks, etc., because they will increase the fiber intake and reduce the glycemic peak. But as you know, as an Italian, to stay away from a starch, it's almost suicidal. And when I cook pasta or any types of starches, I cook them always al dente, firm to the bite, because it reduces the glycemic index of pasta as it does eating cold pasta. So, in both cases, I always opt for pasta that is really hard to bite. Legumes such as chickpeas, beans, lentil, and broad beans, as they are essential sources of vegetable protein. Therefore, I make a main course and not as a side dish out of them. Although they contain a small percentage of carbohydrates, they have a low glycemic index and appear to reduce the glycemic peak. It's good to eat them once or twice a week, even in a combination with carbs, to form a tasty and unique dishes. I occasionally eat meat, both red and white, but no more than twice a month, especially lean cuts and, of course, deprived of visible fat. Poultry also once a week without the skin, because it is the part that contains the most fat. I choose them carefully, hormone-free and organically raised. Large chicken breast includes the most amount of antibiotics, and I don't need them because I am not into the weightlifting program no time soon. I drink skimmed or semi-skimmed milk and yogurt, as they are foods with a low glycemic number. I also consume 2 tablespoons of ricotta cheese every other day. The cheese is little in fat, creamy, spreadable, with a unique richness, and sprinkled with cinnamon is truly divine. I consume cheese 2 or 3 times a week as a main course and not as an out of a meal. I choose fresh 50 grams of aged Grana Padano Parmigiano or cheese that has been aged at least 6 months and beyond. I make heavy use of spices and aromatic herbs, foods with a low GI index, helping food preparation by reducing salt consumption, natural flavors with simple cooking procedures. Water, preferably with low mineral content, at least 1 quart per day. And here again, I should probably do a little bit better in this department, and I am trying very hard. I will be right back after a brief intermission. Hello, friends. Please consider supporting the Flavors and Knowledge podcast. Donated proceeds are applied to absorb the cost of cooking classes and health education for children. Help a child affected with diabetes with a sponsorship donation toward adequately managing the condition through Food First. Chef Walter's Children Diabetes Foundation brings this message. Welcome back, and here's some behavioral advice. In the case of overweight or obesity, weight loss, and abdominal circumference regularization, I recommend a reduction in fat mass, especially in areas around the waistline and critical organ locations. A healthy weight reduces blood sugar levels and other cardiovascular risk factors, such as arterial hypertension, cholesterol, and triglycerides. Make your life more active. Go to work on foot or by bicycle instead of by car. Park far away from your destination. Avoid using the lift and take the stairs, etc. You know all the routines. I practice physical activity 3 times a week, of a minimum of 150 minutes per week. Optimal would be 300 minutes, both aerobic and muscle strengthening, but constant physical exercise gives beneficial effect to those who have diabetes and is essentially for eliminating excess fat and losing the weight properly. I'm also obsessed with reading product labels, especially to be sure of the sugar content. Always beware of the sugar-free product, as they are often high in fat and therefore high in calories. Guidelines are often sketchy. Just trust your palate. Carry out regular blood checks and cardiological screening as directed by your doctor. As a practical advice, those suffering from type 2 diabetes mellitus could include in their diet a breakfast consisting of a cup of semi-skimmed milk or a jar of low-fat yogurt, plus some sort of a rusk or bread or cereal, or maybe some dry biscuit, plus a medium-sized fruit, usually about 150 grams, to be eaten preferably with the peel on, if it is well washed, of course. Lunch and dinner as complete meals consisting of bread, pasta or rice, preferably cooked al dente, using all grain in about 50% of the cases, plus a second course, which would be meat or fish or cheese, perhaps cold cuts or eggs, plus a vegetable, plus one single fruit. Those of you who do not want to eat first and second courses can make unique dishes based on carbohydrates and proteins. Seek functional proteins and legumes if possible. For example, pasta with tuna, rice or pasta with legumes, pasta with mozzarella and tomato, maybe a sandwich with roast beef, etc., always accompanied by vegetables and fruits. For morning and afternoon snacks, or in the late evening, if you're used to having dinner early, let's say before 8 p.m., think of fresh fruit, a low-fat yogurt with a spoonful of unsweetened cereal, or a glass of milk, or a few flakes of aged cheese with a couple of rusk on the side. I also crack 2 medium coconuts and eat the flesh at least once or twice a week. And in addition to some of these suggestions, learn some cooking. Trust yourself when you deal with your body and your health. Make quality food your medicine. Food education can be the greatest asset you have. I know people with 3 masters, but they eat junk every time I see them. And finally, after listening to this podcast, you might feel dejected, but not so fast just yet. There is plenty of great food to select for a successful diabetes management. It is a matter of getting involved, research, and modify. And for those of us gifted with this frustrating challenge, imagine if we were born ugly and dumb. Neither of those as a remedy or a medication. Luckily, we have plenty of healthy options. So go forward, never let diabetes win, and live your life with the glycemic index rules, and you'll be fine, just like me. Follow Flavors and Knowledge on Anchor.fm or your preferred platform. Also, subscribe to NutriUkini24, which is a compilation of short videocasts on YouTube under the Chef Walters Cooking School page. If you're in a mood for some good recipes, you can join our newsletter. It's called Flavors and Knowledge, just like the podcast, and it's offered on Substack.com. Finally, if you're on occasion today or tonight and you're cooking something that is diabetic related, even in that case, always keep your eyes on the fire, and we'll reconnect on the next round. Stay well. Be safe. Ciao, ciao.
Flavors and Knowledge is brought to you by Chef Walters Cooking School in Cranston, Rhode Island. For classes, workshops, events, and programs, please visit our website at chefwalterscookingschool.com. For all other services offered by Chef Walters Food Group, check out our main website, chefwalter.com.